Hello, hello, and welcome to the Love Lindsay podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Wheeler. A military wife and mom who's built 2 successful businesses and launched a charity to give back to military families. We are grateful for where we are today, but the road to get here has not always been easy. My hope is that this show will be a chance to pay forward some of the lessons that I've learned to help others, and also to learn right along with you by creating conversations with people who inspire me so that we can all show up a little bit better tomorrow than we did today. Thanks for being here. Enjoy the show. On the show today, I am over the moon excited to have this conversation to share with you all with my dear friend, Lisa Horne. She is wife, mom of 5, homeschool rock star, entrepreneur, wealth of so much information. She's also a food allergy advocate. She's teaching me so much about that as well. And I know that this conversation is going to help so many people. So Lisa, thank you so much for being on today and taking the time to share with us all that you have learned and just let us in a little bit. Give us some of those nuggets to help us navigate homeschooling, navigate life as a mom and teacher, and all the things that many of us have sort of been thrust into recently.
I'm excited. I'm excited to have this chat. It's for a long time, whenever I would tell people that I was a homeschooler, I would kind of get those looks, and you could tell like a little bit of the judgy eyes.
For sure. There are stereotypes, right? Like, oh, you're one of those moms. Oh, you're one of those people, right? And I think it has evolved so much. It has become so much more. And I am in awe of the way that you juggle so much. And am just excited to learn even more from you. I know when the pandemic hit about a year ago, right? So many of us were thrust into this homeschooling life or virtual schooling or some kind of combination that many of us didn't choose, but due to the circumstances, it's just what became reality. I am so grateful. We had amazing teachers. My kids' virtual experience was incredible. And my kids are a little bit older, so they could be kind of self-starters. And so I have nothing to complain about, but it was still new territory to navigate. But I know so many friends that really were struggling with young kids trying to homeschool. How do you do kids at a bunch of different ages? Are you failing them? Are they learning anything? Why won't my kids listen to me? Right? Like, so much of that doubt, I think, for a lot of us that never really thought we would be our kids as teachers. And I know the first person when all that happened that popped into my mind was you. And you became this great wealth of knowledge and resource. And that's what this podcast is all about, is sharing those conversations. Not everybody is as lucky to have you on speed dial or to be able to reach out and send a message to somebody like you who has that experience. So that's what today is about. And I'm so grateful of your willingness to share and your openness of the good, the bad, the struggles, and maybe displaying some of those stereotypes about homeschooling.
Yeah. And so I think it kind of happened through unfortunate circumstances over the last year. Obviously, I would love to introduce homeschooling to everybody under different circumstances, but it was kind of neat to be able to finally really share and really get people to break down those stereotypes and really understand what it is to homeschool, what it is to be a kid that homeschools, what it is to be a mom or a family that homeschools. And so I have 5 kids, as you know. My oldest is 13, and then I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And I've always homeschooled. So my 13-year-old, we were going to send him to public school. Just a little bit about how we came to that decision. It wasn't through COVID or anything like that, how some people did. But he had and he still does, he has a life-threatening peanut allergy. And it's kind of interesting, when I was a kid, when you were a kid, I don't know what your experience was, but I knew no one that had a peanut allergy.
No.
Kids did not. I mean, there might have been 1 or 2 or 3. There might have been the few that did. I knew no one, and we moved a lot. I went to different schools in Colorado, Illinois, Texas, Arizona. I went to lots of different schools because my mom, she was in corporate America. We moved a lot. Never knew a kid with a peanut allergy.
No, we had peanuts in every snack, in everything. And then when I became a mom, this next generation, I remember taking my daughter to preschool. the first time we're so excited and I brought snack and it was like big signs everywhere. We have a
Yeah.
peanut allergy in the class and you can't do it. And that was my first, that was, you know, at 30 some years old, that was my first introduction to that.
Yeah.
So for you all with your son having the allergy, was that the first idea of to keep him safe, this makes the most sense for us? Or had homeschooling always been something you thought you would do? You wanted a big family? I mean, that's always been a dream, right?
So I always wanted a big family. But I used to have the stereotypes about homeschoolers that a lot of people have about me. And if you would have asked me 15 or 20 years ago, it would have been a big fat nope. Like a big
hard pass.
No,
not for
I
me.
Would never homeschool my kids, right?
And I think that's what a lot of us think, right? Like, oh gosh, I come from a bunch of teachers. My brother's a teacher, my stepsister, like my sister-in-law, all these teachers. And I have so much admiration for teachers. I think they are superheroes and rock stars. And I love, love, love teachers, and they don't get enough credit. But I never saw myself as someone who like, yep, that's the path for me. Or I think I lack the patience. To be perfectly brutally honest, I don't know that I have the patience to do it.
Yeah, that was never my path. And I think another kind of like a side note, another misconception is that a lot of people think that homeschoolers don't appreciate and love teachers. Maybe they think they're better than them, or they don't, or there's something there of why they're not sending their kids. 95% or more of the homeschoolers I meet, we love school teachers. We're just a different kind of teacher. So it's not like a competition thing or a dislike thing. Or a disdain thing. But what did happen for us is, so I was planning on sending him. And in fact, I wanted to make sure that he would be safe. And so I even joined the school PTA the year prior to him being a kindergartner, so that it was a small town, it was in a rural area. And what a lot of people don't understand, and what I didn't even know as a new mom of food allergies when he was 1 year old and had his first anaphylactic reaction, is that just because they have an EpiPen or an AviQ, whatever the brand is, now there's different brands, it may not save their life. It's not a save all. So they could still get that EpiPen and they still may not make it. And there's many people that don't make it, unfortunately. And so kind of the rule of thumb that our pediatrician told us is that you have about 45 minutes to get him to a hospital. So if you ever read the instructions on an EpiPen, it says, it tells you how to inject the EpiPen, but then the last instruction on there is call 911. So just because they have the EpiPen doesn't mean they're fine. Being in a rural area, the hospital wasn't that close. And then if he had to be air vacked down to the valley here in Phoenix, it was just, I didn't feel totally comfortable. And
that's scary. And Lisa, take us back to that first really quick. I know, because this is not like, oh, he gets sick or, oh, he gets hives. I mean, this from a very early age is a severe allergy. This is life-threatening. Talk about his kind of first reaction and how you knew this was serious, because I think that plays into it. And even if folks that don't have kids with food allergies, I think it's an important thing to talk about too, because there are more and more of them now that I think there are parents that can relate to that piece of it as well as the homeschooling.
Absolutely. And I think even though there's so many more people that have it, literally millions of Americans, people still don't get it. We still have so much ground to cover when it comes to educating the community with food allergies. We'll go to a restaurant and we'll say, kind of, hey, heads up to the waitress, our son has a peanut allergy. Can you direct us to something on the menu that would be safe for him? And oftentimes, I can't even tell you, it's not just been once or twice. The well-intended waitress will say, oh yeah, we're gluten-free here. We even have a gluten-free part of the menu. And I'm like, I look at my husband.
Not the same thing.
Yeah. Because I don't think they get it.
Well, and I think, and like you said, well-intending people just don't get it. And I've learned so much from following Lisa. She does such a good job of educating people, because you've had to educate people within your families to go to a family gathering of, hey, what was this cooked with? And it's not just, does it not have raw peanuts in it? It's, well, what was it cooked in? What was the oil? Could it be cross-contaminated? There's so much have to investigate because of how severe his reactions were.
Right.
Talk about that first time and what, I guess, as scary as that would be as a mom, why you had to take such drastic changes in how you looked at things and how that affected obviously going to school?
Right. So his very first reaction, have you ever had those Scotcheroos Rice Krispie treats? You put peanut
Yes,
butter
yes, yes, yes.
and it has the chocolate. They're so good. And he was about 8 or 9 months old, and we were like, "Oh yeah, let's break off
A
a
little
little
taste, right? Yeah.
and see his cute little face and how he enjoys it, and he's going to think it's so good." And he ended up getting hives. And so typically what will happen is the very first reaction is not serious. The very first reaction is usually your body's first interaction with this invader. And it's like, oh, that's not good. And typically each reaction will get worse. And even at that point, we had no idea. He's my oldest. And as a new young mom, I had zero idea, zero. And so because of that, I didn't take him to the emergency room. I didn't take him because it was just hives at that point. Then fast forward, he's a little bit older. He's about 18 months now. And those little Uncrustable peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, I love peanut butter. I was excited to have him try it. And so I cut one of those into some little pieces, and he wasn't interested in it. And so just like, you have kids, sometimes when they're little, you'll get a little bit of the chocolate pudding or a little bit of whatever, and you'll put it on their mouth so that they stick their little tongue out and try it. And then they realize, oh yeah, that is good.
That's good. Yeah.
And so I did get the tiniest little bit off the edge of the sandwich and put it to his mouth, and he started screaming bloody murder. And I just kind of froze for a second, and I turned around to my kitchen island. I was right by the kitchen island. I got some paper towels and water and wet them, and I was going to just clean his mouth. In that 30 seconds, I mean, maybe 60 seconds at the most, it was not long to turn around and wet a piece of paper towel. By the time I turned back around, he has super long eyelashes. I could not see his eyelashes. His eyes had completely... his face had swollen to the point that his eyes, you couldn't see his eyelashes or anything. And he was losing color. He was flushing. I didn't know what was happening. And so
were you home with him by yourself at that point?
I was alone. Yeah. It was just during the day. My husband was at work, and I was just at home with him. And so luckily we had a hospital at the other house that we had lived in at the time that was about 2 miles up the road. And so I grabbed him. I grabbed my keys. I didn't have shoes on. I didn't have my purse. I didn't have anything. I sped up the street to the hospital emergency room, and I ran in with no shoes, no purse, no nothing, as he was starting to go limp in my arms. So, and by this time, because it was only 2 miles away, I mean, maybe 10 minutes had passed. And I said, I just gave my son peanut butter. And that snapped the nurses into a frenzy. And they swooped him from me, and they gave him steroids. They gave him basically what's in the IV, or what's in an EpiPen, but through an IV. It's adrenaline, really, to kind of get your heart, going. And but he could have died. He could have died. And so he had to stay in the hospital for quite a while. I called my husband and my father-in-law. And the older generation, it really took a long time for my parents and my husband's parents to get, because where we grew up with no one having peanut allergies really in the classroom or things like that, my parents' generation, they really are not,
oh, this isn't a big deal. This was a fluke. This is he can't really be that allergic, or you don't have to cut all that out, or you don't have to make those kind of changes, right?
Right.
Someone not knowing the severity.
Yeah. So when they came to the hospital, it was my husband and my father-in-law. It was eye-opening for them to see this little tiny, he wasn't even 2 years old yet, this little tiny baby body on a table. You can't see his facial features normal. You can't see his eyelashes. You can't, because the eyes just swell. I mean, because what happened, I think, when I turned around to get the paper towel, I think he was trying to get it off of himself. I've talked to adults that have, whether it be peanut allergy or other food allergies, and they've said that, because I've asked, because I don't have food allergies, I'm like, what does it feel like? And they said that when they've had it get on their lips or their tongue, it literally feels like knives stabbing them. Like, I guess it's excruciating, not to mention what it can do with, it can, affect your other bodily functions and organs.
Your breathing, your heart, your lungs, everything. Yeah.
Everything. Yeah.
Oh, so scary. Well, obviously that would encourage anybody to take some pretty drastic measures. You do such a great job of educating, but as a mom, I'm sure there have still been, has he had other reactions? Have there been other close calls in the last, 10 years?
Yeah, it's been many years. So after that happened, as a mom, and especially when it's your first child, now on my 5th kid, when he falls, I'm like, get back up, you're fine. But especially because he was my first, my oldest, it was very traumatic for me as a parent. And I think it would be traumatic. I mean, really, if you see something tragic happening to your child, it's going to be hard, even if it's a 5th child or whatever, right? And so from that point, I really got invested in educating myself as much as I could on all things food allergy. I wanted to know as much as I could about, because he's not just, some people could be intolerant to a food, he's anaphylactic. And anaphylaxis can result in death. And so I wanted to learn as much as I could about all the things. And then I got involved with a national nonprofit. I helped them do a local walk to raise funds for research, for education, awareness, support, all the things. And because I learned as much as I could, and I followed the advice of my our allergist and our pediatrician, he, knock on wood, the only time that he's had a couple of reactions. One was when he was maybe 7 or 8 years old. We went to a birthday party, and those, usually it's Melissa and Doug, the wooden toys. He had a wooden toast. They were playing in the play kitchen at the birthday party. There was this little play. It was the cutest little, like a Pottery Barn play kitchen. That's so much fun for a little kid. And they were playing with the toast, and he put the toast in his mouth. And so some other kid at some point in time must have eaten peanut butter. And also, it wasn't like there was gobs of it. It was, you couldn't even see it. It looked like it was a clean toy. To the naked eye, it looked like it was a clean toy. And he put it in his mouth, and he started having, his voice started sounding like a frog. And so I didn't see any other reactions. He wasn't getting hives. He wasn't getting anything else. I gave him some Benadryl. If there's different protocols to administering epinephrine versus administering Benadryl. I almost gave him an EpiPen, but what I did do is keep an eye on him. I took him to the emergency room, and his blood pressure was a little bit off, but they kept monitoring him, and then he was fine. But it just goes to show that even playing, that's why a lot of parents are nervous.
Little speck.
Yeah, to send them to
some kids, some folks can make a really big difference.
Yeah, and little kids, when they're even 10 and younger, to really get them, their brains aren't fully developed to truly follow instructions. Don't share your food with other people. And when they're real little, 5 years old, 4 years old, sticking their fingers in each other's face and all the things.
And I know your son is older now, and he has learned from you to be an advocate for himself. He knows to ask questions. He knows what he can't have. Obviously, you still worry about him. You still ask the questions too.
Yeah.
But I really admire you, how you have been such a vocal advocate, because I am sure there are times that that's uncomfortable to ask someone who's invited you to dinner and almost like questioning them, right? Like what's in this? So before we kind of bump over to, I think, to homeschool, I think this is such an important thing. I think as a parent, you want to be the advocate, but I'm sure that's an uncomfortable place to be also.
Oh, very.
But I think you do it with such grace. So what have you learned through that process for folks that maybe have kids with food allergies about being an advocate, but doing it in a way that is educational maybe and not confrontational? Because I think you do such a great job of that.
Thank you. It is very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. And I think sometimes what others may not realize is when someone is making a request, or in their best way they know how, in their most well-intended way, kind of like the well-intended waitress that offered us a gluten-free menu. I really do think that everybody has good intentions. I think most people are just good people, and most people just have good intentions. And so I think the world could use a lot more grace. Everybody just giving everybody else a lot more grace. And so that said, whether it was on soccer teams, and so he's actually not home right now. So even though we homeschool, it's spring break here in Arizona, and he takes computer coding. He's not really a sporty kid. He likes chess. He likes computer coding. He likes those type things. And so throughout the whole year, he goes to a computer coding center to earn certifications and things like that. And anyway, this week, because the public schools are off, they're having a spring break camp. And so even though he's not a public schooler, I'm just letting him take the week off of school. And he's at this computer coding camp. And I still get nervous, even though he's 13 and he took his own sack lunch, and he'll be fine. But when I first took him there, for example, I asked them, what precautions do you take for kids with peanut allergies? Do you know how to administer an EpiPen? I kind of have to assess the situation. Or at soccer games, or he was in Boy Scouts and I would send him on overnight camps. Those can be uncomfortable because you do sometimes get the parents that do the eye rolls. Oh, and I've even had some people be upset because their kid loves Reese's peanut butter cups and now they can't have them. And I'm like, I'm really sorry. I'm ruining that for you, just trying not.
But I'm not being an overbearing parent. Can you make one sacrifice so that my kid doesn't have a possibly fatal reaction?
Yeah, I'm literally just trying to keep my kid alive. Yeah. Not trying to ruin everyone's fun. And
what do you think has helped in those situations too? I mean, I know a lot of it is your confidence and your passion for the topic, and obviously your love and advocacy for your son. But what do you think, if you could give somebody advice on that, of what that has been like, or what do you feel like has helped? Is it how you approach it? Obviously you're trying to give more grace to people, and your tone of how you sort of start the conversation. Has that been helpful?
So it's interesting, the most uncomfortable it's been and the most confrontation I've received was actually through certain family members, which was kind of interesting. And that made it that much harder because the random mom at school, but we didn't send him to public school, but the random mom at Boy Scouts, or the random mom at whatever, I may never see her again. I may not really value that relationship. I may think to myself, I really don't care what this mom thinks about me. I want to keep my son safe. And this isn't about me. This isn't about her. This isn't about a Reese's peanut butter cup. This is literally about my son's life. I'm literally just trying to keep my son alive. And so I think in those instances, I tell myself and I realize it's not about me. By making it not personal and realizing I'm literally just trying to keep my son alive, that's helped. In the situations where you value the relationship, it's hard to separate it and realize, okay, this isn't about our relationship. This isn't about this person that I love dearly. This is not about me. This is just about, this is for his safety. And I think sometimes it's hard for them too. And I have to try and understand where they're coming from, because we have all of our family that live here in the Valley. And so we get together frequently, very frequently. And so I've taught my son, there's certain things that people with food allergies do. They are taught to literally read every label every time, because manufacturing processes can change. And you would be so surprised what you find peanuts in. Tillamook mint chocolate chip ice cream. We got a bucket of that about a month or two ago. And my 10-year-old, she was digging right out of the bucket, not even like putting it in a bowl. I mean, she was just so excited eating it right out of the bucket. And my husband had come over and he was reading the label just out of habit, because that's what we do. If you're a food allergy family, you read all the labels. And somehow this had passed, because we're human and we're fallible and we're open to making mistakes. Everybody can. And my husband's like, wait, everybody stop. There was peanut oil in it. It's just regular mint chocolate chip ice cream. It's not mint chocolate chip ice cream with chunks of peanut butter, or mint chocolate chip ice cream with peanut whatever. It was literally just plain mint chocolate chip ice cream. But for some reason, they put peanut oil in it. We've had plain chocolate ice cream, not Rocky Road, not whatever, plain chocolate ice cream. And it even says on the container, plain chocolate ice cream, and they put peanut in it. Plain Keebler crackers. And I don't know if they still do, because we kind of steered clear of Keebler for a while, because it's just, they changed their ingredients. They changed their manufacturing processes. There was a line of some of their crackers that they put peanut flour in Nutri-Grain bars for a while. They started, because of the protein and diets and, keto and all the things, and people doing different diets. They put peanut flour in a line of Nutri-Grain bars. So for the longest time, I was able to tell people, there was our go-to products. Oh yeah, Nutri-Grain, that's great. And it, he gets a little bit of fruit, he gets a little, I'm thinking it's a good thing. And then I saw that they made this new protein Nutri-Grain bar. So then we had to be careful, or,
I cannot, like that, to wrap your head around, from someone who isn't a food allergy family, to wrap your head around what that's like, to always be on alert and to be, oh wait, we have to read this. And the possibility that could happen if you miss something, right? And we're human and we're flawed. It would be really easy to be defensive or to kind of snap at somebody. So that trying to give grace and have grace while also having to take it very seriously would be a very, very hard place to be in all the time.
Well, and I think, and so to kind of circle back to answering your question, so because we're in the habit of always reading every label every time, and we know that we get tripped up, we're his parents. We love him, hopefully, I think, more than anybody else loves him. I feel like it's safe to say we even make mistakes. So when we go to these other family members' homes and we say, oh, which one of, because sometimes it'll be potluck style or whatever. Who made the rolls? Who made the cookies? Who made whatever? Okay, oh, you made the cookies? What brand of chocolate chips did you use? Because there's certain brands that you just know from reading every label at every grocery store all the time. I can usually tell just from knowing the brand if it's safe or not. You always should read the actual label, but it's kind of a quick way too of knowing, no, we don't do that. And so I think family, as much as I try to tell them, we're going to always ask. We're never going to stop asking. We will, and that's what we teach our son to do. He's always going to read every label every time. I think sometimes they're like, doesn't she trust us yet? Does she doubt us? Does she think I'm stupid or dumb or not a clean person? Do you think my kitchen's not a clean kitchen? And I think
no, that has nothing to do with it. Yeah.
I think they start making it about them. And it's not about if I think your kitchen's clean enough. It's not about if I think that you're smart and intelligent. It's not about if I believe you that you read the label. You can do all those things and I'm still going to ask and I'm still going to check.
But I love that, giving us all confidence to, be an advocate and not be afraid of somebody, having hurt feelings, but doing it in a kind way, but still asking. It's not going to keep you from asking because that's what you need to do for you.
Right. We almost got kicked off of an airline flight. We went to,
I can't imagine all the peanuts on airplanes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and goodness. In a confined space for hours.
There's certain airlines that we won't even fly. And then there's other airlines that we know are friendly to our plight.
Yes.
And so we were going to Hawaii. And going back to what I had mentioned earlier about once you do that EpiPen, you still have about 45 minutes that you need to be near medically trained people and equipment. Should that EpiPen not be enough for whatever reason. And so I thought, oh dear, we're going from Arizona to Hawaii. We're going over waters. What if something happens mid-flight? So I was scared and nervous. And so we called the airline ahead of time. I even made sure that we booked with an airline that was usually known for being friendly with peanuts. And there are certain airlines that you can let them know of your peanut allergy, and then they won't serve peanuts on that flight. They'll serve pretzels, or I've seen them serve shortbread cookies. They'll serve other things. And you hear people, and when it's kind of funny, when you hear the announcement, they say, special announcement, we won't be serving peanuts this flight. We have a small child with a peanut allergy, and we request that everybody refrain from eating their peanuts during this flight, blah, 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 blah. And they make the nice little announcement. And then us, the family with the kid with the peanut allergy, we're like, thank you. And then we're silently saying little prayers that we could just get there safe.
Yeah.
We just want to get there safe. Yeah. We're not trying to ruin anybody's day or flight. because believe me, an anaphylactic reaction on a flight would definitely ruin everyone's flight, right?
For sure. Oh my gosh, I cannot even fathom.
Yeah,
you are a rock star that you don't keep your kids from doing things. You guys go and do, and I love that you have not limited his experiences, but you've had to be an advocate, right? To make sure that he can do all of these things, which I think is so admirable. He's such a great kid, and sure lucky to have you in his corner. And I know you and your husband are such great advocates for it. Obviously, not everyone is going to have such an extreme reason to maybe take the homeschool route. For some people, it's time. For some people, it's ideology, right? It's what's being taught. There are numerous reasons for why maybe you take that homeschooling route. Take us back to the beginning. I think for a lot of us that were thrust into it, we're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm sure there were moments where even if you did it out of a need, right, to keep your son safe, you've continued to do it. And I think to this day are grateful that you did it and are happy for the choice, right? But take us back in those early days, which maybe a lot of us felt, there had to have been challenges thinking, what am I doing? Can I do this? As you had more kids, now you're teaching preschool through middle school at one time to 5 kids. Take us through sort of that progression from the beginning to now, where it's a pretty dang well-oiled machine. Like, you got this figured out and you're confident in sort of how you do it, because I think that journey is really important for a lot of us that were just kind of at the beginning going, what in the world? How am I going to do this?
Yeah. So it's funny. There's not a year that goes by, even at the beginning of this school year, that I still don't doubt myself. And it's interesting, but I always try to be as authentic as I can with people, so that when and if they have that same doubt, they know that they're not alone and that it's okay. And you can still continue on. And so you have this view of me like, wow, this is a well-oiled machine. And I appreciate that. And thank you. But inside, I'm always doubting. I think as a parent, when even when you're not talking about homeschooling and you're just talking about how we're raising our children, am I messing up? Should I let him or her do this? Or should I let him and her hang out with these friends? Or should I let them watch this movie? Or should I do X, Y, Z? I think we're always, as parents, we don't know. We've never done this before,
Well, I love how real you are, because I think a lot of us have that feeling of like, are we screwing this up? Oh my goodness. Am I doing my kids a disservice? Can I really do this? Did I make the right choice? Because teachers are incredible, but at the end of the day, they do get to go home. And this is, like you said, you love your child more than anybody else. And I think teachers love their kids like family, and I'm so grateful for them, but it is a different kind of feeling, a different kind of responsibility.
Absolutely. And so when I first started, I had mentioned before, here come some kids are making their way down now. I said, you guys be really good. Stay up there. Watch a movie together. When I first started, to kind of backtrack a little bit, I was going to send him to public school. I was going to enroll him in the public school kindergarten, and he was going to be a public schooler. I just did not, there was something that my heart, my confidence, it just wasn't there. I tried for it to be, but like I said, even them putting their mouth on something else that another kid has put their mouth on, when I saw how sensitive he was, and how, going back to when he was 18 months old, and I saw him not himself, and I couldn't even see his eyelashes. I mean, it was just hard. And meeting with the school, the confidence wasn't there. And so our personal story was, and there's many people that do send their kids with food allergies to school just fine. So everybody has to do what works for them. And if it works for them, I think that's fantastic and awesome. And if it doesn't, like me, I think that's also fantastic and awesome. Everybody has to do what works for them. And that's okay to be different. I told my husband one night, I was like, I'm not feeling it. Can we please consider homeschooling him? And I never thought I would say that. Like, I was
not just come out of my mouth.
Yeah, I would have never, ever have imagined that. But I knew somebody that homeschooled their kids, and I had been picking her brain and asking her questions. And my husband, he was definitely, his whole entire schooling life, because he grew up in this small town that we were living in at the time, was like a Saved by the Bell. And he wanted all his kids to have Saved by the Bell life like he did. And I was like, so he, for that reason, because he wanted the experience for them, he was like, no, I don't think so. Well, anyway, we're Christians. And I said, can we pray about this? Will you pray about this, please? Because I feel like the answer is no. And I'm going to go back and pray about this. And it was at that time, 2000, would have been 2011-ish. Anyway, the Sandy Hook shooting happened that next morning. And I'm in no way insinuating that that was because of our prayer, you know, like it was a coincidence, but I think it was enough to push us both over. It was like we were already praying about it for his safety with food allergies, and then things going on in the world with school shootings. We were like, maybe let's just homeschool kindergarten.
Yeah, let's try it.
Let's just try it.
I think that's how a lot of people start out, right? Like, let's try it for a semester. Let's try it for a year. I know friends at homeschool, and let's just see.
Yeah. And so it started off with food allergies. Then it was like, oh my goodness, there's school shootings. We didn't have that. My brother coincidentally lived in Colorado, and we were at the neighboring school to Columbine. And so when all these things were happening, it kind of struck home for me again. And I was just like, the food allergies, the school shootings, like it was just all too much as a parent. You know, it's really hard to be a parent nowadays, isn't it?
You are not kidding, my
so
friend.
much.
You're not kidding.
So we started, and I was definitely did not have confidence in myself. And I found that friend that she went to the same church as us, and she was like my mentor. My friend and my mentor, and I asked her all the things. What curriculum do you use? And I think that's the first thing that people need to do is find yourself a good curriculum. You don't have to, you can. There are some people that take the time to create their own curriculum, what math and science, and they even make their own, literally their own lessons and everything. You can buy boxed curriculum where literally you order for the kindergartner and a box of kindergartner textbooks and everything you need shows up in a box, and it's like the best thing ever.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. So they're really, I think that's what people assume is that they have to create their own, or where do you even start if I don't have that background? But there are resources all over, right? If you just look for it.
Absolutely. And so I found that boxed curriculum, and it was wonderful. I would literally open it up and it would say, on Monday, you do this and this and this. And then you go to that lesson, and it would say, you know, read this out of the book, do this, make this art project. This is what it looks like. This is how you do it. This is what supplies that you'll need.
It gave you a blueprint, right? Of something to follow. So you weren't just kind of thrown out into the ocean by yourself.
Right. And from there, I joined different Facebook support groups because there was other moms. And I don't know how the homeschool moms of the 80s and the 70s and the 60s and like before, I don't know how they did it. Bless their hearts. I don't know how.
But technology now is such a gift of, I can imagine that would be a very isolating place to be, of doubting yourself and then feeling like, am I doing this right? And not having that community or those resources to lean on. Like you said, now there are Facebook groups, there are online forums, there's books you can read, there's co-ops, different where folks get together. I think it's really incredible how it has evolved.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then we had my daughter, then a couple of years later. And so we had continued with him because it was going really well. And he was enjoying it. He was thriving. And this is all pre-COVID times. And so we joined a local, there's oftentimes, right now it's a little bit harder. Many of the in-person support groups aren't functioning because of COVID restrictions, depending on where you live. But typically they will have park days, and they will have holiday parties, and they will have science fairs with just the homeschoolers, and all these different outlets for you to have many of those same experiences. They'll even put on little proms,
That's so
and
awesome.
so many things that
I think that's one of the, when we were talking about stereotypes, I think that's one of the stereotypes, right? Oh, well, homeschool kids, they don't get the socialization. They aren't able to interact the same, oh, homeschool kids are weird. We've all heard those things. And I think those were our stereotypes probably from, decades ago. I'm aging myself here. But I know that to not be true now. And how do you sort of provide for that they're not getting in school, to give them that great, well-rounded experience, just in a different way, maybe than a public school?
Yeah, that has probably been one of the biggest misconceptions that I've heard over the years. And that even to this day, I still find myself working really hard to prove it wrong. I even thought that going into it, like my kid might be so messed up socially, right? Maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe maybe this is a terrible idea. But because they have those support groups that will meet in person, that is one way that they are socializing, right? And I think that sometimes we get in such a habit, and this is nothing bad with brick and mortar schools. This is nothing bad about public schools or private schools or charter schools or whatever. Everybody has their different ways that they're able to socialize in any of those circumstances. It just becomes different in homeschool. And I think a lot of people saw that when they were forced home and not able to go in person. So not everybody has 4 siblings like my son does, right? But your family can become how you socialize. And it is a smaller group of people, but I send my kids out to play in the backyard and they're all playing together. There's also the kids that maybe they are an only child, right? And so, okay, well, that's great. That's great that you have 5 kids, but my kid, I only have 1 kid, so everybody's different. Well, what I've done with all of my children is I constantly put them in activities. And because when you take out the walking down the hall, lining up, bathroom breaks, all the different things at a public school, and not to say that those things are bad, but when you take out all that, all the behavioral redirection that happens when there's 30 kids in a classroom, Johnny, sit down, Susie, stop talking, all the things, you take all those things out and you focus on just the curriculum. So you go to the homeschool environment and you do the curriculum. We can complete our school with my kindergartner, preschool, 15 to 30 minutes, and he's checked out, right? He doesn't even have the attention span. As you move up each grade level, I would say you add on about 30 minutes. So my kindergartner, we can get all of her curriculum done in about 30 to 45 minutes. Some days it might take a little bit longer depending on what we're doing. Like we just ordered caterpillars. She's watching the process as they make the cocoon and they, evolve into a butterfly. And so there'll be days that we spend more time on certain things. And then as they go into first grade, my second grader, she spends probably about an hour, 15 minutes to an hour and 45 minutes, and she's done. All the way up to my middle school child, and he is done with his schoolwork, I would say probably in about 3 to 4 hours, depending on how fast he works, depending on how much he fights it. My kids still fight me. So I that's another thing I hear from people. My kid won't listen to me. My kids don't listen to me either. Not all the time. But because we take out a lot of that line up and all the other things, we have more time in our day to then play instruments, go to swim lessons, go to all the different things. And so my second grader, she plays the violin and the piano. My 10-year-old plays the harp and the piano. My 13-year-old, he plays the guitar and the piano, because we can schedule these lessons during the school day. That's their music time. They go to Boy Scouts. They go to activities at church. Last night, my girls were at a hip hop dance class, and the other girls that are in their dance class, they all play Roblox. So they're making friends with the little girls at dance, even though it's only once a week at the hip hop dance class, and it's an hour-long class. They're still making friends and socializing with these other girls that are their age, and then they're carrying on that relationship and that socializing through Roblox. And some people don't like kids playing video games. We do video games. I think it's fine personally, but now they have those friends that they play with online, and they FaceTime them while they're playing, and they have these great experiences. So I think people being stuck at home through COVID has helped them to kind of see, now it's much more restricted. We're usually not that restricted as homeschoolers with all the restrictions that are going on. There's been a lot of things that our kids don't do anymore, but it's usually through extracurricular activities or going to the local neighborhood park when other kids are there as well. And we're playing with everybody else just the same.
That obviously, pros and cons to every situation, right? Every decision that you make, whether you go to public school or you homeschool.
Yeah.
But wow, the time when you're talking about how you can condense a school day into that time, and then how that frees up the rest of your day
Yeah.
to do with it whatever you want.
Yeah.
I think is the number one thing that I hear from homeschool parents or homeschool families is the freedom that that gives them.
Yeah, we have so much freedom, and then the struggle becomes to not do so much that you're so consumed by activities, because you can, if you
having some time to breathe is important too, right? To
just sitting, it's good for the kids to learn to be bored. It's good for them to learn to just go find, just like our parents would tell us when we were younger, go find something to do. Go be creative and find something to do. But we'll usually finish, our goal is usually to finish by lunchtime. So if we can finish by lunchtime, then we have our lunch, and then everybody can do whatever they want for the rest of the day. Of course, excluding if they have an activity or whatnot, but otherwise the rest of the day is ours. Freedom of vacations. I noticed when I'm watching my social media last week and this week, everybody is going everywhere, right? Well, if they can, depending on what their situation is, right? We didn't go anywhere. And the reason is because we like to take our vacations when the whole rest of the world is not on vacation, so that we have the beach to ourselves. Or I know Disneyland isn't quite open yet, but even though we live in Arizona, we're annual pass holders, and we go there when it is open, we go there frequently. We'll choose to take our vacations on a downtime. And so for us, we like that freedom of being able to say, okay, well, we want to hit Disneyland, not during the busy times, because, you know, if you've ever been to Disneyland, you can stand in line for hours and you don't really get to ride that many rides, right?
Well, just talk about like enhancing that experience of the vacation, getting the most bang for your buck, probably a better deal going in non-peak times.
Or a lot
of people to be said about that freedom.
Yeah, a lot of people going to California right now, and everybody's like, the water is so cold. Well, don't go right now. Wait. And that was one of the things that I struggled with when I became a homeschool mom. It took me many years to work through this. Is I always compared myself to the public school kids. I compared my kids to those kids. I compared myself to the public school teachers or private school, charter school, whatever. And I would compare even my schedule. Oh, well, they're taking off right now. I need to take off right now. It was like ingrained in me that I needed to be like them and do what they were doing. And it was very freeing to realize I don't have to do what they're doing. I'm in charge. I'm the principal. I'm the teacher. I'm the everything, right?
I love that.
We could take our break when we want to take our break, and we can go to California when the ocean's not cold, and we could wait 2 months and go when it's warm.
Oh, I love that. Lisa, talk to me about, you talked a little bit about, you know, having that freedom, obviously, to make the schedule that works for you, but I'm guessing advice you would give would be, or would it be some kind of schedule that you say you try to be done by noon? You know, do kids get up and put clothes on like they're going to school? Do you guys do school in jammies? Like, I mean, we did a lot of jammies in virtual school. Let me tell you, like, have you put on new clothes in the last 3 days? Can we maybe change out of something, especially in the winter months? But I wonder what that looks like for you, because I think that would be helpful for people. If, hey, you can make your own, but this is what works for us, to maybe give some parents some ideas of maybe how to better have some structure, even though you have the freedom of making it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are definitely days when I'm in pajamas all day long, and then it gets nighttime again, and I'm like, do I just keep these pajamas on, or do I put new pajamas on?
I think we can all relate to that. Having just gone through quarantine and COVID, I think we can all relate to that now more than ever.
Yeah. So there's definitely times when my kids they'll be in pajamas. In fact, when some of them snuck down a few minutes ago to get a snack, half of them were in pajamas and half of them weren't. And so this week we're kind of taking it easy, because I do have my 13-year-old in the spring break camp for coding. And so I haven't really been enforcing anything. It's kind of just like, whatever. We'll fly by the seat of our pants this week, but on a normal school week, my kids know that we wake up at about 8 a.m. and there's a lot of things that I'm a little bit more natural with their health and the way that we do things. I think some people might say I'm a little crunchy or like tree huggerish or whatever, and that's okay. But I like them to wake up when it's more natural for their body. We've even noticed, like, my teenager and my 10-year-old, they've started sleeping a little bit longer. And my husband's like, get them up. We're a little different on the way that we parent a little bit, and that's okay. But I'm like, no, if they're tired, if their body's tired, let them sleep a little bit longer. But we do try to have everybody up at the latest by 8:30. And I'm not I know some people are very strict on their schedule. I'm a little bit not. So we roughly get up between 8 and 8:30. And then my kids know that the first thing they need to do is, we call it their morning chart. And it literally is a little PDF file that I found on Pinterest. And I printed it out and laminated it. And my kids know that they go and they look at that morning chart, and they brush their teeth, they brush their hair, they change their clothes. I think it even says like go potty.
I love it.
My 13-year-old's like, seriously, mom? And
Mom,
I'm like,
I have to mark that one off.
Yeah, make sure you do the morning chart. And so it has kind of like those basic hygiene and self-care things for kids that they need to do. Some of them just ignore it, just like any kid. If you tell them, go clean your room, and they don't clean their room. And so there will be days when I say, do your morning chart, and some of them fail to do some of the things. But it's good for them to learn for life, because really our end goal is we're raising what will be future independent adults, right?
Absolutely.
So they have their morning chart. We try to get them to do their morning chart every day. And then after that, I have we don't use a chalkboard. We have a big whiteboard. And in the corner of it, I have written down the schedule. I think it's really important, not only for me to know what the schedule is and have easy access to seeing it, but I think it also helps kids to know. That way they're not constantly left wondering,
what's next? What are we doing?
How much longer, because before I started doing that, I noticed that sometimes my kids, they would get overwhelmed because they could never see the light at the end of the tunnel. What are you going to have me do next? What are you going to have me do next? And if they could see the schedule, then they could see, okay, there's light at the end of the tunnel, instead of feeling like they're stuck at this desk for eternity.
I love that.
So at the beginning of my day, what helps me is I give my older kids things that they can do on their own. And so there is, for example, a keyboarding typing program. It's called Mavis Beacon. You can get it on Amazon. I think you can even do a free download off their website, but it's a computer typing program, so that they can learn how to type. And it teaches them, and it even tracks their words per minute and things like that. But that's something that they could do on their own. I don't need to be there to walk them through it. It's because it's almost like a video game style, and it's on the computer. So some of those things, they even have a Spanish program that they do. It's also something that the child is self-led in. And so Spanish, keyboarding or typing. They also do, there is a free website, extra math, I think it is, extramath.org. They go on there and they log in. It tests them to see where they're at. And then it gives them daily, instead of flashcards, because we do flashcards every once in a while, but my kids, just like any other kids, oh yeah, we totally did it, mom. And they didn't do it. Or they somehow find a way to fight and argue over doing
no, not my kids ever.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Somehow it's become a thing where they're like bickering over doing anyway, and it be somehow somebody flipped the card too fast, or somebody did it too slow, or whatever. So then we moved to doing this individually to cut out.
I love that though, because I've often wondered, like, how does she do it? How are you doing 5 different kids at 5 different grade levels? How in the world? But that is brilliant. You're giving them started on doing something that's more, self-starter, individually led, Well, I'm assuming you start with the little ones who need that more one-on-one attention, then maybe they're done for the day, and then you shift over to the bigger
Yeah.
kids needing attention.
So during that time, I'll get my kindergartner, because I'm teaching her how to read. I'm teaching her the C makes the K sound, the P makes the P sound. I mean, I can't just stick her in front of a computer. And so while they're doing their self-led things, silent reading, we'll do some silent reading during that time. They know what they need to do. And I put all of that in a certain color. And right now it happens to be in an orange marker on the board. So I always tell them, do your orange things. And my kids know, do your orange stuff means there's stuff on their own. And so I'll work with Genevieve, my 5-year-old, my kindergartner, and we'll get her stuff done so that I'm one-on-one paying attention to her. My preschooler, there are lots of really fun preschool curriculums out there. Over the years, this is just my personal opinion, I feel like they learn the most through play, through interacting with their world, and through soaking in what's going on around them like a little sponge. And so he can already count to at least 10, if not 20. He's only 3. Just from observing, just from coming, and he'll just sit and join us when we're doing the kindergarten curriculum. Just from observing and jumping in, he's already learning those things. So I don't do a specific curriculum with him, although with my oldest 3, I did do a preschool curriculum with them. But as I had more kids, it became, okay, is this necessary? Am I creating more stress on myself doing what I think I should be doing? And I think women in general do that with a lot of things. We look at Pinterest, or we look at other people on social media, or we look at a neighbor or a sister-in-law or whoever, and we compare and we look at things. Oh, sorry. My dog is outside and jumped up by the window, and I got caught off guard. And we compare ourselves, and we look at what we think somebody else is doing, or we look at maybe when we're homeschooling and we look at the public school and we look at what we think we should be doing. And sometimes we do more than we really should be doing, and we take on too much, and it becomes overwhelming. And then burnout can happen, especially if you're a homeschool mom, because it does take a lot. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. And so that was one thing that from my experience of educating my oldest 3, I realized he doesn't really, my younger 2, they don't really need an individual preschool curriculum. We can invite them to join in when we're doing other lessons, and they can soak in what they soak in. So I don't do an individual one with him. And then once I'm done with her, then I go back to the older kids, and I excuse her and my 3-year-old, and they go play. They go off and they play and they have fun. Sometime, or maybe they'll watch a Disney movie or whatever it is that they do. They go off and they do their thing, and she learned what she needed to learn for the day. In fact, my husband, she was watching this. She found some cute little cartoon on Amazon Prime, and she's like, "Dad, that says Pat and Nat," and he was surprised. He's like, "You know how to read?"
Yeah, my mom was a good teacher.
Yeah. I think even he sometimes I've noticed this a lot in different support circles, is when the person in the relationship, the spouse that is not at home with the children teaching, it's hard sometimes for them to kind of gain their own testimony of homeschooling, or believing that their significant other is doing the job. And that's something that, can be kind of like the food allergies, where you have to get people on your team and get people on board to realize, no, I'm doing a good job. They're learning. Here, go show dad your paper you wrote today on the Mayflower or whatever.
Oh, I can only imagine of that, if you're already doubting yourself a little bit, and then feeling like you don't know what you're doing, and then do people like, what do you do all day? That's like the stay-at-home mom thing, right? Like, what do you do all day? Are you kidding me? I can remember people saying that to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would go to the 9 to 5 all day long. Because that's easier than staying home. But this is the right thing to do. No, I love that perspective. So when you obviously have talked about having a community, right? and having some kind of schedule and letting your kids be on, while you can be loose with that schedule, giving them kind of a game plan of what that looks like for you, reaching out for curriculum so that you don't have to do it all. What do you feel like are, the tools or the advice that you would give somebody starting out to say, hey, I wish I had known these 3 things or something, to kind of give us that starting point?
I would say first and foremost would be to get a good curriculum. Um, Depending on what you're looking for, there's so many different things out there. The first one that we started with is called My Father's World. It is a mainstream Christian curriculum, and they have all the way from preschool through high school. So if you wanted something that you could just rely on and go with, there's also other curriculums out there that are not Christian based, but that was the one that I have experience with that we use. And in fact, I love how they teach reading, so much so that even though I ended up going with a different curriculum with some of my older kids, I still to this day use their kindergarten and first grade curriculum because it works so well. I think if I were to ever be a teacher in the public schools, I would love kindergarten and first grade. I think those little kids are so much fun. But I also think that teaching children to read is one of the hardest things. My 13-year-old, we're doing algebra and all the things. And to me, that's not hard. I could do that all day. Teaching little children to read is really hard.
It is so hard. And I think it takes that patience too. So I'll let you finish because I want to ask you a question about patience too. Because I feel like even if you're not a homeschool parent, if you're in that virtual world now, maybe not by choice, that patience is what I think is learning that skill in the education space.
Yeah,
is so valuable. Okay, so curriculum.
So curriculum, I would say, is your number one thing that you need to have. Then I would say a schedule, whatever that schedule means to you. But one of the most important things with a schedule is being flexible with constantly adjusting your sails on your ship. Because at what you think is going to work for the first week of school, based on kids, and all of a sudden you can tell, okay, these two of my kids, they're just starting to lose it. It's 10:30 in the morning, and I can tell. And there's differences in boys and girls. My boys cannot sit still for the life of them. And so you start learning different things about, okay, this one can't sit still. This one can't do this for so long. And you have to be able to change it and say, okay, maybe we add in recess, meaning send them to the backyard and play, to right? Jump on the trampoline. Yeah. And so you have to be able to say, okay, or realizing when you need breaks and being able to change that schedule. And then also, my 13-year-old is really good with science and math. So good with science and math. Not as strong with his language arts. My 10-year-old is so amazing with language arts, not so good with math. And so you might have to adjust the schedule so that you can on the times when they're best. Because if you're trying to teach them something that they're not very good at, and you wait until the end of the day when they're already burnt out on school for the day, it's going to make it worse on you and push your patience and their patience. And so do yourself the favor of being open to organizing things which maximize on each person's abilities and when they're their best self. And I think to answer your question about that stress level, knowing when you need to take a break and being okay with it. And I've had, especially one of my really close friends that we stay in contact, a lot of people have that girlfriend that they text all day long, like maybe even more than your husband sometimes or whatever, And so we're constantly in communication all day long, constantly messaging one another. And this was her first year homeschooling. And she would reach out to me and she's like, I just can't today. Like it's 7:00 in the morning and I just can't today. And I told her, well, guess what? You're the principal of your school. Call it a snow day. Give yourself some grace. And I think everybody can relate to that, even if it's not schooling, whether it's work or whatever in life. I think that sometimes we need a day. We need a day. We need to shut the phone off, shut the social media off. We need to turn off the TV. Maybe we go skiing. Maybe we go hiking. Maybe we just go lie in our bed with the lights off and watch Netflix in the dark. I don't know. Whatever it looks like to you. Sometimes mama needs a break. And sometimes the kids need a break. Sometimes I'm on it and I'm fine, but I can tell that my kids, they need a vacation, they need a break, or vice versa. And so I think knowing when to throw in the towel, not completely throw in the towel, but enough to give yourself so that you can come back fresh and renewed, helps a ton.
I think that's an important tool to understand and realize kind of your situation, and realizing when, like, hey, everybody's a little bit cranky. Maybe we need a little break. We're going to switch things up and we're going to come back to this later, and not, or taking a day because everybody just needs it, and we'll make up for it later because you're in control of your schedule. But I think that's what I'm seeing so much with parents. I think especially in this virtual world, that they're just frustrated, and the kids are frustrated, and they feel like they're failing, and the parents feel like they're failing. And it's just a really bad combination, and no one is feeling good about it. And so I think that's where you're seeing the funny memes are coming out about, about virtual schooling and parents being at home. And I get it, because that patience level that is needed, we all can probably be better at that. But that tool of recognizing it and maybe giving yourself a recess, instead of sort of still pounding at it, because I think that's where I'm seeing friends really get frustrated.
Yeah, is because they feel, you don't want to fail your child.
No.
You don't want to fail your child. And then you yourself don't want to fail at what you're doing. And so sometimes it's like they get on a hamster wheel, and they're on that hamster wheel and they're like, I got to keep going. I got to keep going. Because sometimes it's like fight or flight. There's things that are happening right now, especially with COVID and everything else that's going on. And people are like, I don't know what the light at the end of the tunnel is in this whole world situation. I don't know all the things. All I know is that I got to keep walking. I got to keep going. I got to keep moving. I got to keep whatever. And it's kind of like a survival mechanism. I got to keep going. I got to keep going. Sometimes you need to stop. Sometimes you have to get off that hamster wheel of whatever and take a break, let your kid take a break. And whether that means a break for 30 minutes or a break for the day. There's even been times when, because things were just so stressful, with just all the different things happening. Maybe somebody was sick, maybe multiple kids were sick, or I got sick, or my husband got sick, or whatever was happening in our life. There was even times where I was like, you know what, we're taking the whole week off. And whenever I would do that at times earlier on in our homeschooling journey, I never allowed myself to fully enjoy it. And I never allowed myself to fully relax because I felt guilty. I felt that if anybody knew, they would judge me because I wasn't following the exact schedule that everybody else was following. And the more that I went on, I realized, wait a second, we don't have to do a 9-month schedule or whatever the schedule is. Here it's actually a modified year round. But the more that I talk to other homeschoolers, a lot of homeschoolers, they just tell themselves that they're schooling for the whole year, whether that be August to August or January through December. And they just give themselves that whole year to do the curriculum, so that if you do want to take a week off, it doesn't matter. You're still going to finish. You still have to make sure you're staying on track. You don't want to take too many times off. And I think it's, just like people that own their own business, they're their own boss. You have to know when you need to take a break. You need to know when you need to come back. Because if you take a break for too long, just like people posting to social media, it's okay to take a break, but if you take a break for too long, then you miss out on the algorithm, and you have to,
there's the whole idea, like, rest, but don't quit, right? Like, right. You have to know when you need to take that time so that you can come back invigorated and ready to be the homeschool mom or the business owner or right. whatever, on your health and fitness journey or whatever that looks like.
Exactly.
I love that so much.
Anything.
Yeah. So you have a middle schooler. He will be going into high school. I know some folks homeschool all the way through. Some choose to do it when they're younger. It's kind of a two-part question. I know people question about, hitting all the marks, right? Like, are they ready to go to college? Have they learned all the things they would have learned in public school? Can they graduate? Are there tests that you have to do to comply with the schools or the counties to make sure that they're ready? And do you think that you will always homeschool? Or is it an every year we sort of have this conversation again and see where your son's at or where each kid is at?
So yeah, those are great questions. And I get asked those questions a lot. Anybody that's been homeschooling for a while, I'm sure they also can relate to, especially the question with high school. I get asked that all the time. Will you still homeschool him when he's in high school? And it's funny, and because I think that people ask that because they wonder, how am I going to know enough to be his teacher? And it's an innocent question. I don't take it personally. I think it's a very innocent, well-intended question. But what I've always told people is that I graduated high school with anything, whether you are learning to crochet, whether you are learning to tap dance, whether you're, everybody learned how to make sourdough bread, it seems like during this whole thing, everybody was making sourdough bread.
I love that.
Right? When we learn something, when someone teaches us something, we learn how to golf. We learn how to build a house. When you've learned something yourself, if you were taught well, you should then be able to go teach someone else, in theory. So my husband and I have had this discussion as well. So I don't doubt the schools that I went to. I believe that when I graduated high school, they taught me everything I needed, because I wasn't homeschooled. Mm-hmm. I went to a college preparatory high school. I went to a really good high school. I believe that they taught me well enough. I should be able to go teach high school. If Absolutely. I graduate, whatever I've learned, I should be able to go and teach that as well.
And you're not doing it alone, right? It's curriculum, right?
Yeah. And
I guess my question a little bit would be more, I have friends who have homeschooled their kids, and then the kids decided that they wanted to be part and like have that high school experience, whether it was play sports, go to prom, be class president, whatever that was, that it was kind of more the kids' choice. And I wondered if that's a conversation that you guys have. Obviously you are capable of doing it. There's amazing curriculum.
Yeah.
Do you want to teach high school? Does he want to be homeschooled or to go? Or is that does that change each year?
Yeah. So we are of the mindset that we'll always homeschool. If any of our children were to ever say, they're just so adamant about it and they truly believe for whatever reason it's not for them or whatever, we would support them in finding a way to make them happy. But our kids love homeschooling, and it's kind of funny. The more that they make little friends in the neighborhood, their friends will even say, I wish I could homeschool. And so it's kind of interesting. They don't really have that desire. They don't feel like they're missing out at all.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And oftentimes we'll be somewhere, going to the zoo or doing whatever. And they know that because we have so much freedom, we can be done with our school by noon, and we can go ice skating in the afternoon. And so my son, he has already verbalized that and said, he's like, I know that if I went to school with my friends, they're all still sitting at their desks. I'm already done and we're at the ice skating rink. And so he likes
I love that he has those experiences and he's able to say, I can see both sides and this is what I want and this is what's best for me.
Yeah. And he has lots of cousins that go to public school, and that's great for them and they love it and they're enjoying their experiences. One of the things that we do plan on doing, and we haven't quite gotten to that point yet, is when in a couple of years, when he's a little bit older and a little bit more mature, is we plan on sending him to the local community college to start taking college level classes as a high school student. And so the ultimate goal is that by the time he would normally graduate high school, he will have either completed an associate's level degree or almost.
That's incredible. There are so many, I know Montana has a program, and I know Washington does as well, where we used to live, where they would allow high school students to do that. I think it's such an incredible opportunity. In those states, it's at no charge. It is kind of, it's a program through the schools to give kids kind of a head start. But I think that's amazing that he would be able to do that probably with even more ease than someone in public schools, if that's something that he chose to do, and get that experience while still being at home. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and for each state, it's different. There is a national nonprofit, HSLDA, and with a membership, I think it's $10 a month. It's a pretty fair fee. They not only will give you pro bono representation should you ever need it, because unfortunately, some of the laws in certain states can infringe upon the rights of parents when it comes to them making that choice to homeschool. Every state's different. We're in Arizona and we have a lot of homeschool freedom, which is fantastic. So we haven't really experienced that here. But I definitely think it's something that is worth having, just so that people can, should they ever need it, they have it. But it's a great resource. You can call them up and ask them questions. They have resources on their website with all the different laws for every state, because different states, whereas here we don't have to take tests, but we choose to take tests. So while our state doesn't require us to have our children tested or other things, we have them take the California Achievement Test at the end of every year for our own knowledge, so that we know, okay,
are we on track? Are we?
Am I doing a good job as a teacher? Is he or she grasping the information? Are they doing a good job as a student? And so that helps us to know and to stay on track. Once they get to high school level, depending on the college, for example, here, if he were to go to Arizona State University, once you have, I believe it's 24 college level credits to transfer in, you don't even need a GED or anything else. You have those college level credits to transfer in. Not to say that he won't choose to go get his GED so that he also has that. He could, but he doesn't need it. Many of the colleges and universities will accept homeschoolers, and it's different for every state, where you would need to come up with your own homeschool transcripts, in addition to if they took any college level courses at, say, a community college.
That's amazing. Oh, friend, I could talk to you for hours about this. I want to be respectful of your time. No, I know you have 4 kiddos at home, 1 at camp. You got a lot going on, as always, juggling all those plates. But I thank you so much. Is there anything that we didn't hit on, or any last nugget that you would like to leave with folks? Just encouraging them that they can do it, even if they're doubting themselves, and even if it's by choice or by not being in sort of this homeschool environment. Obviously, you and your kids are thriving in your sweet family, and we're just so grateful for your example.
Oh, thank you. Well, I would just say, with food allergies, it is following your allergist, following your pediatrician, and just sticking with that. Even if you're questioned, even if you hit some adversity, to just know that you're doing what's right by your child, and just keep doing that. Give others grace, even if they don't understand, even if they come at you because for whatever reason they don't understand why you're doing what you're doing. To just have grace and to persevere and to just keep moving forward. Read every label every time. Always have your EpiPens with you, right? And then with homeschool, I would say, get that curriculum, get a schedule, and get a team or a support group. And that can mean so many different things. It doesn't necessarily have to be a support group where you go and meet with people in person, especially during these times where it's a little bit harder to meet with people in person right now. It could be a Facebook group that you find online. It could be, maybe it starts off with one person, you know, that like for you knowing me, maybe it's that one homeschooler that you happen to know, and that's your connection. If you're married and you have your spouse on your team, your support group can be from many different places, but have someone or some people that you can talk to. And give yourself and your children grace, be flexible, make time for yourself, and don't compare. Not that you don't want to make sure that your kid is, okay, is my kid at first grade reading level like they should be? Not so much comparing in that way, but more so, you don't have to do everything. You're at home. Homeschool shouldn't look like public school. It's not. You don't even have to have we do have desks, because my kids, they did want that experience. They wanted desks.
I love it.
So we have actual school desks, but school could be around the kitchen table all day, every day. School could be in the living room on couches. School can be whatever you want it to be. The schedule, whether you do it 9 months, whether you do it for the whole year, but not comparing. And I think a lot of the things that will help people will help them in life in general, or whether they're business owners, whether they're moms, whatever it is, giving yourself grace, knowing when to take breaks, knowing when to get back at it. All of those things I think can help us in many facets of life, not just homeschooling.
You are incredible, sweet friend. Before I leave you, I have to ask you one question I ask all my guests.
Oh.
If you could go back and tell your 16-year-old self one thing, all the things you've learned in life experiences, good and bad, what is one nugget that you would give her?
Wow. Just one thing. I feel like
I'm putting you on the spot, aren't I? What's one thing, one nugget you wish you had known?
One thing is that probably no matter how hard it rains and pours, the sun will always come out. The rainbow will always come. Don't ever give up. No matter what life throws at you, never give up.
Oh my gosh, I love you, friend. For anybody who's listening who doesn't follow you yet, what's the best way to follow you? I love following you on all platforms, but I've learned so much from your food allergy PI. Tell people how to follow you. I think it has been such a wealth of information for me. And I want to share that with everybody.
Absolutely. So on all social media channels, it's food allergy PI. That's my website, goodness. foodallergypi.com, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the things is Food Allergy PI.
You're the best, sweet friend. I love you. Have a great day. Friends, thanks for joining us today on the Love Lindsay podcast. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more amazing conversations with incredible men and women in my life that have made an impact. And I know that they'll have an impact on yours as well. Have a great day.